Race for the Chinese Zodiac has 3 to 5 animals racing to have years named after them. Capstone Games provided this in exchange for an honest review. Randomly slot the inner wheel pieces into the wheel. Don't use the walk piece with 3 players. Give everyone an animal token and action cards depending on player count. Finally, give everyone 2 1 and 2 energy cards and 1 3 energy card. Everyone chooses an action card to play face down. This card, plus player count, decides the number of karma tokens you start with. I'll explain karma tokens soon. One thing to note, the action card you played will be unavailable to you until you retrieve it, so think carefully about what's more important. Everyone simultaneously plays an action card and an energy card face down. Cheat, run, cooperate, and walk are all green move actions. Help, rest, and strategize are yellow non-movement actions, meaning you'll receive karma tokens, energy cards, or retrieve your cards when you take these actions. Anyhow, reveal the cards, then resolve them in order from lowest action number to highest. As you resolve, add the total energy for that action. The outer wheel reward is determined by the total energy listed on the action tile on the inner wheel. Each action works a little differently. The player at the highest individual energy benefits, multiple players benefit, or no one benefits. Most outer spaces show a purple reward that applies to any action. Some outer wheel spaces have a green and a yellow reward that correspond to just green or yellow actions. There are some other icons to keep in mind. The circular icon means you may trade 2 karma tokens to move 3 spaces on the game board. The person icon means the number is equal to the number of players that chose that particular action in a round. The arrows mean you can do an energy exchange. You can trade multiple low energy cards for an equal value high one, or break a high card into lower ones. You can trade up 1 level of energy higher than you already have, such as a level 4 if you already have a level 3, to a maximum level of 6. When you wish to take your cards back into your hand, play the Strategize action. Depending on whether you touch the highest energy or not, you'll be able to retrieve all or most of your action and energy cards. If you strategize on the game board's river spaces, meaning the final 3 rows, you'll need to sacrifice an energy card of your choice back to the supply. When you play actions, you can play 1 higher than the previous one. That card you played at the very start may have given you karma tokens, but you have fewer options. You may pay a karma token to play a card 1 number lower than the current action card. Play 2 karma tokens to play a card 2 or more numbers lower. Honestly, the whole game is just play cards and pay karma if necessary, and compare action cards and energy cards to everyone else depending on the action selected. At the end of each round, turn the wheel so each action has a new set of rewards. That's it. The game's rules are mostly already on the individual cards or the wheels. Play cards to try and activate the actions you want in order to finish ahead of your rivals. That's Race for the Chinese Zodiac. The wheel and game board, player areas, plus decks and bits mean Race for the Chinese Zodiac should be played on dining tables. Once you know what you're doing, 3 could play in 45 to 60 minutes, including setup and takedown. Expect your first few games to be as long as 90 minutes though. Reading and math are grade 2 level. The gameplay has you tracking what opponents have played, predict what they're planning, and weigh those against your plans. It's not particularly difficult and clicks pretty quickly, but I'd save this for experienced 8 or 9-year-old gamers. Small hands might need to use a card holder. In our 3rd game of Race for the Chinese Zodiac, I got out to a huge lead. I was already in the river spaces when Mom and Dad were still in the 2nd row. Dad had a few big turns and suddenly passed me in the 2nd to last row. A few failed cheats and some other choices kept us neck and neck for a couple of turns. At the end, I moved 2 spaces, then paid karma to move 3 more to finish. Dad and Mom picked the same action, but he had the lower energy, leaving him 1 space away from the end. Race for the Chinese Zodiac has individual player powers that, for the most part, are thematic. The rat is the tiebreaker because it's the first animal in the Chinese zodiac. These will inform your strategy, and with 12 of them, players have plenty of choice. Karma gaining abilities seem to be stronger because having more karma allows you to play lower cards or have additional movement. You don't need to plan as well, which takes away from one of the more interesting parts of the game. The action selection reminds me of Coloma, which I'll talk about again later. I like that you need to decide if it's worth going to a place if it'll bust. The should I or shouldn't I press your luck moments mixed with the bluffing and reading of opponents are the best parts of the game. Some people don't like racing games, but this is based on the Chinese myth of the Great Race. The word is in the title. I think it makes thematic sense, and you really feel things get tight toward the end. I would only recommend you play this with 4 or more people. With 3, it runs into the same problem as Coloma. One person can get all the benefits of a spot, whereas 2 others cause a spot to bust. With more people, everyone will be blocking one another at least a few times, so it feels fairer. The rulebook isn't very good, the references could be cleaned up and are missing some important details, and same for the action cards. Race for the Chinese Zodiac has many things I like. Hand management, especially being unable to use cards until you retrieve them. I love this in Viral and Not Alone. It has a race element, so you're keeping track of your opponents. Race Formula 90 is one of my favorite games of all time. Coloma, which I just reviewed and liked, has blind bidding for actions. Variable player powers? Yep, that's one of my favorite mechanisms. In other words, I must love this game, right? Not exactly. Despite all the individual things I usually like, they just don't work together well enough to make this game fun. During Q&A, my dad asked if a polish would make this be a game I want to play again instead of all those other games I mentioned. I said it would need to be a pretty big polish, and even then, I know I already enjoyed those games, so I'm gonna just stick with those.